What if the last sound you heard before vanishing forever wasn't a scream, but a whisper calling your name? In late October 2019, a group of university students from Freiburg found out the hard way when they camped in Germany's Black Forest near the Triberg waterfalls. Drawn by tales of the forest's haunted trails, they ignored local warnings about the whispering shadows that supposedly lured people into the woods at night, never to return. By midnight, their campfire was crackling as they shared ghost stories, laughing off the eerie legends. Then they heard it, a faint murmur, like voices carried on the wind, growing clearer until it formed words in German. Komm zu uns, come to us. The laughter stopped, replaced by unease. One of them, Anna, insisted it was just their imagination and suggested they go to bed. But as they doused the fire, the whispers seemed to circle their campsite, growing louder and more insistent. At 3 a.m., Anna woke to find her tent empty. Her friends were gone. She stumbled outside, calling their names, but the whispers drowned her out, now chanting her name. Her flashlight flickered as she wandered toward the sound, deeper into the forest, until she reached a clearing near the waterfalls. There she found their backpacks, neatly arranged in a circle, but no sign of her friends. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. Anna ran back to Triberg, where locals told her similar stories of vanishings dating back centuries. Her friends were never found, but some hikers claimed to hear faint whispers near the waterfalls, calling out new names in the night. Imagine hiking alone in the wilderness, then finding a photo of yourself sleeping, taken by something that shouldn't exist. In the summer of 2021, Mark Bennett, a seasoned hiker from Juneau, Alaska, experienced this nightmare in the Tongass National Forest near the Mendenhall Glacier. He set out on a lesser-known trail, one locals call the Hidden Gem, armed with a GPS, satellite phone, and enough supplies for a week. He told his family he'd be back in 3 days. On the second day, Mark noticed something odd. His GPS kept glitching, showing him in places he hadn't been. By afternoon, the trail markers he'd followed vanished, and the trees seemed to close in, their shadows stretching unnaturally long despite the midday sun. He heard a low hum, like a distant engine, but there wasn't a road for miles. Trying to stay calm, he set up camp near a small creek, figuring he'd retrace his steps in the morning. That night, he woke to the sound of footsteps circling his tent, slow, deliberate, but too heavy to be an animal. At dawn, Mark packed up, determined to find his way out, but the creek he'd camped by was gone. In its place was a crude stone cairn, etched with symbols he didn't recognize. His satellite phone wouldn't connect, and his compass spun wildly. After hours of wandering, he stumbled into a clearing where he found his own backpack, except he was still wearing it. Inside the duplicate pack was a photo of him sleeping in his tent the previous night, taken from above. Mark eventually made it out after 5 days, disoriented and half-starved, but he never spoke of the trail again. Locals near Mendenhall whisper that the forest keeps what it takes, and some say they've seen cairns appear overnight, marking paths that lead nowhere. Have you ever locked eyes with something in the dark, and realized it wasn't human? In the fall of 2022, a couple from Knoxville, Emily and Josh, faced this terror in the Great Smoky Mountains while hiking the Alum Cave Trail to Mount LeConte. They'd heard the trail was challenging but beautiful, with panoramic views at the summit. They started early, passing other hikers and snapping photos along the way, feeling on top of the world. As dusk fell near the summit, they realized they'd misjudged the time. They wouldn't make it back before dark. Deciding to camp off trail, they found a small clearing and set up their tent. Around midnight, Emily woke to Josh shaking her, whispering that something was outside. Through the tent's mesh window, they saw two glowing red eyes staring back, hovering about 8 feet off the ground, too high for any known animal in the Smokies. The air grew heavy with a rancid smell, like rotting meat, and a low growl vibrated through the ground. Frozen with fear, they stayed quiet, hoping it would leave. But then they heard it, a voice, guttural and inhuman, mimicking Josh's earlier laugh from their hike. The red eyes moved closer, pressing against the tent fabric, and the growling turned into a scream that echoed through the mountains. At first light, the eyes vanished, and the couple bolted down the trail, leaving their gear behind. When they reached the trailhead, rangers told them they weren't the first to report the red-eyed thing on La Conte. Old-timers in Gatlinburg say it's been haunting the Smokies for generations, waiting for those who stray too far from the path. Within minutes, the light vanished, and so did Liam. The group called out for him, their voices swallowed by the dense canopy, but there was no response, just an unnatural silence where even the insects stopped chirping. Tara led them back to the trail, frantic, but when they reached Cape Tribulation's edge at dawn, they found Liam's camera near a mossy tree, its last photo showing a blinding green light and the faint outline of a humanoid figure with 2 long limbs. Locals later told them of the vanishing lights, an ancient phenomenon in the Daintree tied to disappearances spanning decades. Liam was never found, but some nights, trekkers near Cape Tribulation claimed to see a green glow flickering in the distance. As they hiked deeper into the jungle, the air grew thick with humidity and the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Around 11 p.m., one of the backpackers, Liam, pointed out a faint green glow flickering between the trees far off the trail. Tara's face hardened. She insisted it was just a trick of the eyes and urged them to keep moving. But the light grew brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat, and Liam, curious, stepped off the path to get a closer look. The group hesitated, then followed, drawn by the hypnotic glow despite Tara's protests. What if the last thing you saw before disappearing was a light that wasn't supposed to exist? In the summer of 2020, a group of backpackers from Cairns ventured into Queensland's Daintree rainforest, one of the oldest rainforests in the world, for a guided night trek near Cape Tribulation. They were chasing stories of bioluminescent creatures and rare wildlife, hoping for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Their guide, a local named Tara, warned them to stick close and ignore any strange lights that didn't come from her flashlight. Have you ever heard a sound in the woods that made your blood run cold, but couldn't explain why? In the winter of 2018, a wildlife photographer named Marta Kowalska traveled to the Bia Owi, a forest, a primeval woodland straddling Poland and Belarus, to document the elusive European bison. Known for its ancient trees and untouched wilderness, the forest felt like stepping back in time. Marta set up camp near the HWO Na River, planning a week-long solo expedition, her only companion a small drum she played to scare off curious animals. On her 3rd night, as snow blanketed the ground, Marta woke to the sound of drumming, slow, rhythmic, echoing through the trees. At first, she thought it was an echo of her own playing from earlier, but the beat was different, colder, almost deliberate. She grabbed her flashlight and scanned the darkness, finding nothing but untouched snow around her tent. The drumming grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was coming from just beyond her campsite. Then it stopped, replaced by a faint tapping on the tent fabric, like fingers brushing against it. Marta sat frozen, clutching her knife, until dawn broke. When she emerged, she found footprints in the snow, bare human feet, impossibly large, circling her tent in a perfect ring. At the center of the circle, her drum lay shattered, its pieces arranged to form an arrow pointing deeper into the forest. Terrified, she packed up and fled, but as she reached the forest's edge near Hanshin, Ka locals told her of the silent drummer, a spirit said to haunt Bia, Oi, mimicking sounds to lure people into its domain. Some say they still hear faint drumming near the HWO, Na River, followed by silence that feels heavier than it should.